the entire Middle East will slip into chaos, I will tell you this. The Arab people have nowhere to go but within their region. Now the Syrians are fleeing Syria, but where are they going? They're going to Jordan, they're going to Turkey, they're going to Lebanon. If something happens in Jordan, the Jordanian people, where are they gonna go? They're gonna go to Iraq, Syria, they're gonna go to Saudi Arabia. Where can they go? The same thing with the Saudis, the same thing with the Moroccans, the same thing with the Algerians, the same thing with the Sudanese. If anything happens in that region, if the region explodes, and it could explode, the Arab people will stuck in that part of the world. They have no other part to go to. They have no other place to go to. They belong to that place. They came out from that place, and they will die in that region. They have no other place to go. But what if the entire Middle East explodes and Israel is in the middle? Where the Israelis are going to go? Where are they going to go? This is a question that they need to ask themselves, because they're not going to be spared from the waves of change or the waves of destruction in the Middle East if it happens. So they have also to come up with an answer. That's why they call the Arab Spring a massive earthquake, because they understand that now it is in the hands of the Arab people. They can decide whether they want to have stability and tyranny, or they want to have freedom, and potentially they will have stability in maybe a decade from now. It is our choice. I'm telling you, it's a painful choice, because we've seen how they are now. I just came from Jordan. The government, the state, has no respect anymore. That's a problem for the Arab people. It is a problem, because you cannot force the law. The police has no respect. People don't fear the government, don't fear the regime anymore. The same thing in Egypt, the same thing in Syria, the same thing in Libya, the same thing in Iraq now. People don't fear the government. But I'm a person who grew up in a country that was ruled by one person. When he sneezes, everyone we has to acknowledge. Okay? Now, when he sneezes, no one even cares. Maybe they're bothered by the smell. Okay? And they make it known. So now it is our choice to say, well, I want to live under tyranny, but stability and security, or under freedom, and potentially will achieve our stability and security. This country went through the same process. We had a civil war in this country. It's not only a war, a liberation war that when we fought the colonizers of this country, we also fought a civil war in this country to achieve or to get to the United States we have today. From what I see, that the Arab people have made their choice. They are accepting now the instability with freedom, because eventually we will get to the point we will mature enough. Again, think about it. Take the example of Libya. For 4 years, it was one person who's allowed to speak. Now suddenly you have 4 or 6 million people demanding to speak at the same time. It's going to take some time. But the Middle East is on the brinks of explosion. And if it happens, Israel is in the middle. The only foreign entity in the region is Israel. The only rejected people in the region are the Israelis. Not because of their religion. Brother Abdurrahman, when we started, he said, we have no hatred towards the Jews nor any other religion. In fact, the Jews are living in peace in Morocco, living in peace in Yemen. They have lived in peace throughout our history. It was the Muslims who saved the Jews from the Spanish when we were all driven out of Andalusia. It is the Muslims, the Ottoman Empire, that protected the Jews with a decree, official decree from the Emperor of the Ottoman Empire, or the Sultan, Sultan Murad. It was the Muslims who protected them throughout their history, and we don't see this as a favor. We see it part of who we are. It's part of who we are. The Christians are living in the Arab world mostly in peace, and if someone talk about Egypt and the injustices, I'll tell you, look at the majority of the Egyptian people. Are they living in peace and injustice? So it's not that the Copts are being discriminated against in Egypt. It is the entire Egyptian people are being discriminated against because of the remnants of the Mubarak regime and the old regime. So it is only Israel that has a problem in the Middle East and has an existential dilemma in the Middle East because of its policies, because of its occupation, because of its aggression, not because of the Jewish identity of its population. That's not true. It's not because of the Jewish identity of the Israeli people. And as you know, that 1.2 Israeli citizens are Arabs, mostly Muslims, some are Christians, and the Christians and the Muslims, the Palestinian Christians and Muslims in Israel who have an Israeli citizenship are being discriminated against. Not only the Muslims, Palestinian Muslims who are being discriminated against, but the Christian Palestinians are being discriminated against as well. So it is the Israeli policies. Israel has an existential dilemma. As long as it continues its aggression, as long as it continues its occupation, as long as it continues to consider itself a colonial project or an advanced colonial project in the Middle East and refuse to become part of that region, of the history of that region, of the population of that region. You cannot live on the sidelines and expect to be included and to be given the leadership in that region. So I would say Israel, yes, has an existential dilemma because of its own policies, not because of its identity. And thank you.
Thank you for sharing those eye-opening thoughts with us, Dr. Al-Burshid. We unfortunately don't have any time for question and answer, so we're going to go ahead and end the event, but just a couple announcements. Our series continues on the rest of the week. We will be out on Ring Road during the day. Please join us tomorrow for dehydrating the Palestinian land, and actually not tomorrow, tonight, 7:30 in Student Center, dehydrating the Palestinian land and people with IFFAFG at Crystal Cove in Student Center at 7:30. Thank you for coming out, and we hope you enjoy. Actually, one more thing. So if you want free food, go over to the booth over there behind the wall, and you will learn about the Palestinian water issue, and you'll get some free food, so that's a good deal. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for coming out, and we hope you enjoyed and benefited.
I came
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Gary Koch. You've been quoted as saying that that rockets being sent from Gaza into Israel should be considered. Yeah, I'm recording. Okay. Should be considered legitimate resistance. I wonder if that quote is true, and also since Hamas is considered a terrorist organization by our State Department, do you support Hamas, or do you also condemn them as a terrorist organization?
First of all, the first quotation is taken out of context. Okay, I was saying that Israel fired missiles into Gaza and killed Gazan people. And the Gazan people who are under occupation, technically according to the international law, are under occupation. According to the international law, they have the right to defend themselves and to resist their occupier. So now, whether I have referred to the rockets or not, I'm not sure. But it was in this context that Gaza is under occupation, the Palestinian people are under occupation. They have the right to, according to the international law, unless the U.S. want to withdraw unilaterally from the treaties that it signed and the conventions, the Geneva Conventions, and say that the people under occupation have no right to defend themselves. So it was about defending themselves, not preemption attacks against other people. This is one.
What about if? Okay, go ahead.
Two. Do I consider Hamas a terrorist group? Well, this is the U.S. official position. Since this is the position and this is the law of the land, which we deal with Hamas as an illegal organization, so we have any sort of relationship with Hamas. Now, personally, I don't defend Hamas. I defend the Palestinian people, and the Palestinian people, I defend them collectively. I defend them collectively. Includes the Palestinians, that include Fatah, include the Popular Front, the Democratic Front, include the initiative, the Palestinian Initiative, and include any other faction in the Palestinian society that defends and represents the plight of the Palestinian people. And the question should be, those who defend Israel in this country, do they also defend the creation and the expansion of the illegal settlements in the West Bank, those who are paying and sponsoring and financing these illegal settlements according to our American law. So I hope that we hear this question here in the U.S. about those who are sending money to Israel, those who are sending bullets to Israel, our own government that is equipping Israel with weapons to kill children in the name of America, while we know that this country does not condone the killing of innocent people. But Israel is doing this in our name. So I hope the question is, for those who are sponsoring Israel and supporting Israel and supporting the illegal activities of Israel in the West Bank by expanding and building settlements, I hope that we hear the same question. And I hope one day that we will hear a question here: do you sponsor the terrorism of the State of Israel?
Dr. Ibrahim, can I just ask you real quick?
Thank you. You answered my question.
Is land for peace a justifiable solution? Gaza, West Bank, in exchange for complete and total silence of rockets?
The Palestinians, most of the Palestinian factions accepted this notion, accepting land for peace. The only issue for the Palestinians and for the Israelis that both insist to maintain their own narratives. The Israelis are insisting on being recognized as a Jewish state, and this contains a narrative because they claim that their history existed there first, and they claim that they were promised the land. So this land is a Jewish land, and just because of according to Netanyahu, he didn't put it exactly the way I'm going to put it, but it happens that another population exists on this land. So they're maintaining a narrative that this land in its entirety is ours. And the Palestinians have the right to maintain their own narrative. That's our land. I come from the 1948 land. I come from Jenin, part of Jenin that is inside 1948. So I have the right to have my own narrative. Now, does that translate into violence or aggression or no? Once we have a two-state solution, and when we talk about two-state solution, we have two international resolutions, 224, 338, and we shouldn't be negotiating on the basis of 224, 338. 224, 338 should be implemented fully. That's our position as Palestinians. I'm not talking about the Palestinian leadership because we have an issue also who represents the Palestinian leadership. We're not allowed to have our own democracy. When people elected their own representatives, they were punished by our own government because they dared to cast their vote to the people that we hate. While we don't punish Israel because it elects Zionist right-wing parties that are not accepted in the US too. So, we have double standards here. Yeah. So when we have our own legitimate leadership, then we can say the solution is 242, 338. This is the official position of this country, regardless of the political pressure on administrations, different administrations.
Which is Gaza, West Bank, and East Jerusalem.
West Bank, Gaza, and the Eastern Jerusalem, yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.